Alrighty then. Who remembers what we've been talking about? David we left behind a little while ago, because remember, David had some kids, and they had some kids, and then there was fighting and arguing. So now we're talking about a bad king. Do you remember the bad king's name, anybody? Anybody? Hands down. Goliath. That would be a good guess. But the bad king's name is Ahab, and he has a wife who has brought idol worship with her, and her name is, anybody remember? Her name is Jezebel. Can you say Jezebel? Jezebel. It's a famous name. You might see it if it's talking about, anyway, it's beside the point. So Ahab worships a false god named Baal. Anybody remember that? Anybody remember how they worshiped Baal? They're going to go up on the mountain, that's right. So when the worst thing they do to worship Baal is they sacrifice their own children. It's a horrible god. So Elijah, remember Elijah? We've been talking about Elijah. Remember Elijah? Elijah went out into the desert and the birds fed him, and then he went and stayed with a widow and her son for a while, and there was a miracle so that the food didn't run out. Remember that? Right. And then the little boy died, and Elijah raised him from the dead. Remember that? Okay. So now we're caught up. God tells him to go and meet Ahab. And he says to Ahab, we're going to have a throwdown. Remember the throwdown? All right? I was going to say, we can catch up. We're going to go up on the mountain. And on the mountain, we're going to build 2 altars. One on the left and one on the right. And on those altars, each of us are going to make a sacrifice. I, Elijah, he says, I will make a sacrifice to the one true God. And you and all your 450 priests and prophets of Baal, the evil god, you'll make a sacrifice to him. Here's the thing. We're not going to bring any fire up on the mountain. We can bring wood, sure. We can bring the dead cow to cut up and put on top of the altar. Absolutely. Have you ever butchered a cow? Any of you? Have any of you, do any of you hunt, or your dads or brothers hunt? Butcher a deer? Nobody's ever seen a butchered animal. Okay, well, it's going to be fun. They're going to butcher the animal. They're going to put it up on top of the altar, right? So Ahab says, sure, no problem. These guys, they've been saying their God is powerful. I'm sure it won't be a problem. Baal is a god of thunder. That means he does the lightning. He'll just do one quick lightning bolt. Altar goes on fire. I get to kill Elijah. This is a win-win-win situation, right? Make sense? So Elijah says, okay, you go first. So the 450 prophets of Baal, now I want you to think about that. Think about how many people 450 is. We probably have maybe 150 in here. So imagine this church full to bursting, and maybe that's 450 if there's only standing room. And right in the middle, they've got an altar, and there's a bloody cow on top of it. And what they're doing is they're dancing around, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're saying, oh, Baal, send fire. You are so great, you are so wonderful, you have the power of lightning, send fire. They do this for hours, all morning long. They're dancing around and jumping around and trying to get their God's attention. And it gets so bad because there's still not a cloud in the sky, there's still no lightning bolt, nothing's going on. So they start pulling out knives and cutting themselves to shed their blood because Baal likes blood. We figured this out, right? Because he likes them to kill their children, so they give him blood. And he still doesn't pay any attention at all. There's nothing going on. So now Elijah, remember this is a throwdown, right? So Elijah starts to smack talk. Starts to make fun of him. He says, hey, yell louder. Maybe he's going to the bathroom. Come on. You have to shout, jump up and down some more. He might be on a trip. You need to get him to come back to light your altar on fire. Right? This is ridiculous. Do you agree this is ridiculous? All these people running and jumping and dancing and cutting themselves and screaming and shouting. So it's bloody all on the ground there, and it's a mess. And meanwhile, all the people of Israel are just sort of watching. And finally, it gets into the afternoon. So Elijah says, okay, you had your chance. My turn. So he says, I need some help. Bring some shovels. We're going to dig a ditch around my altar. So they bring him shovels and they dig a ditch. And he says, bring me some water. Now think about this. It hasn't rained for 3 years. What is the most valuable thing in this country right now? Water. And he says, bring me some water. Pour it on top of the sacrifice. And all the people are like, but that's our drinking water. What are you doing? He says, pour it on. So they pour it on. And he says, bring more. I'm like, that's the rest of the drinking water. He says, I don't care. Pour it on the altar. I don't want anybody saying there's any trick. So they poured water until the trench around the altar was full and everything was soaked. And all the people standing out in the sun on Mount Carmel all day long, their lips are cracked, they're dry, they're parched. They're thinking, this is nuts. Hurry up and fail so we can have the king kill you already. This is ridiculous. We were thirsty. Then Elijah prays. And he says, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you are the Lord God, and that you have turned their heart back again. That's it. That's all he said. He said, hear me and send fire. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and it burned up the sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the water and the trench. It left nothing but a crater. One little prayer. The priests of Baal were dancing around all morning long. Elijah dumped water on his sacrifice, and then one prayer to the true God and fire. So, then the people said, the Lord is God. Whoa, the Lord is God. They weren't thirsty anymore. And Elijah said, if the Lord is God, then let's be done with this. All those 450 priests, kill them. Be done with Baal forever. And then it rained in buckets. So that's the story of Elijah, right? It's kind of anticlimactic after all of that. If it were in a movie, it would be amazing, right? Right? Can you imagine that in a movie? The drenched altar, the fire falls, everything burns up, the people are just, whoa. And boy, is Ahab feeling embarrassed. But that's the story of how God showed his people that he was the one true God. Do you think it changed them? You would think so, right? Maybe for 5 minutes. And then they went right back to doing what they'd been doing before. Which is strange, but it's true. It's how human beings work. So, for now, remember the story of Elijah? Remember that we've been talking about Elijah, right? Elijah. Everybody say Elijah. Can everybody say Mount Carmel? Can everybody say fire from heaven? That's what we've been talking about. Stand up, let's take communion, and off you go to Sunday school. Please take note, the council will dismiss each pew to come to the chalice, so please wait for them.